Film with family. They love the family, they love the movies.
Hello and welcome to Film with Family. My name is Zach,
And I'm Austin.
and we are two cousins who love to talk about movies. And today we are talking about an animal movie in spirit of our animal series we've been doing on our Patreon, but we're bringing it to the main feed, Seabiscuit from 2003. And to talk about it, we brought on my mom, Donna Zweifler. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Aunt Donna.
Hi, Austin.
Glad that you came back to the podcast. It was a joy to have you on last year to talk Bellazaire, but now I get to talk horses.
Yes.
Well, I got obsessed with them as a little kid, and part of it I think had to do with growing up in Detroit. No horses around you, right? But we had a corner house in Detroit, and on the corner was a mailbox, and it was about once a month the mounted police would ride by on their horse, just like as a checking out the neighborhood kind of thing. And that would always drive me crazy. It was more than the ice cream man. When I'd see that mounted police coming, I'd follow him as far as I could, till he left my block, and then I'd look and look. And then when I got big enough to climb on that mailbox, then I climbed on it and I would sit on it and pretend that was my horse. And so I would try to do that when the mounted police came by. It was really geeky, but there's nothing to do when you're a kid, right? So
hmm
I was always trying to, and they came around with pony rides also. They'd bring a pony to your neighborhood, take your picture for $10 or something. And I, got my mom to do that. So, and they were actually close by where I lived, within like 5 miles. There was the mounted police in Rouge Park, and there was pony rides in Rouge Park. And so that was two things that I always wanted to go to. And my dad would usually take me there on a Sunday. On his day off after church, we go for the pony rides where they just stick you on the pony, tie you in the saddle, and you go around the ring. Nobody took you. It was pretty risky, but they just took you. And sometimes they'd let us give an apple or whatever to the police horses. So that was my thrill. And I think once we went to also a DRC racetrack just to watch the horses warming up when it was a free thing that you could do. Anything free we tried to do. So that
Nice.
was when I got obsessed with them to begin with. But I couldn't really have one, of course, in Detroit, but you do what you can do.
Who was your first horse?
My first horse I bought from a friend of mine for $1 because it was an old horse, and his name was Snowman. He was named after the horse that we watched the movies about.
Wow.
So that was something that didn't happen until I was an adult.
Wow.
Wow.
How old are you?
I would say probably 21.
Wow. Where do you keep a horse? And you were living in Detroit?
I was living in Detroit, but I worked in West Bloomfield. I went to school with this girl when I took my animal vet tech classes. That's how we met.
Uh,
And so that I got to go to her farm, and then she says to me, "Well, I got this great horse that nobody really wants anymore, and he's 28 years old." I mean, that's older than Snowman was when he died. He was
Yeah.
26. He died of
oh,
liver
wow.
failure. But I got this great quarter horse for $1 at that name, and he would do anything. And he would just go anywhere, nothing bothered him. He was very much like Snowman in the story. Of course, I never jumped with him or anything, but the longest ride I ever went on any horse was on that horse. And I went from her farm to my brother's house. He was a great horse. I wish I had him still now. But that's why
Oh,
I'm attracted to old horses, because you got to give them a chance. If a horse can make it past 15 years old, they got a great personality, something about them that people keep them around. And that's how I got my first horse.
Yeah, that's a big theme of Seabiscuit, giving him a chance, even
Ex
if
ex
you count him out.
yeah.
that's right.
Second chances.
That's right. Exactly. And why throw something out just because it's a little banged up? That's what the trainer said about every horse he ever met. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we get into the movies, I do want to talk about our little animal adventure that me and you went on earlier this year to Ohio called the
Yeah.
Wilds.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that, Mom?
Yeah. So I think I just saw this animal on the internet somehow. I was searching through Jack Hanna stories and he went and said something about this. And I swear that's where I saw this first image of the Szechuan takin. And I said, that's got to be fake. I've never seen that animal in a picture, in a book, nothing. And then when I found out it's endangered, but it's alive and you can go see him. And I found out it's in Ohio, like I said, 4 hours away. Got to go. But you're the only one that wanted to go with me at that time. So I'm really glad that you said this. I'd still go, and I'd say, let's go. And we did it 2 days, and it was pretty cool. It was
Yeah,
like a
we stayed in the
safari.
yurt.
Yeah, we spent the night, stayed in the yurt, and heard the animals all night long with the burping going on. It's their mating call to each other, and it's just a fantastic place. I tell everybody about it, and they say, "Where is this?" And I said, "Southern Ohio, Cumberland, Ohio." And they're like, "No kidding." Yeah, everybody should go there. Who doesn't want to see nearly extinct animals roaming free? Not in a
Yeah.
cage, not in a zoo.
Yeah, it was exciting. Yeah, we got to go on two tours, and one was like called the Wild Side Tour, where like you're like in a kind of a truck vehicle that like gets drives right up to the animals, and we even
Yeah,
got to feed a rhino and got to feed a giraffe,
yeah.
which was super cool. And the camels came right up to the truck, and the ostrich was they come right up to you, so you get way closer to animals than you would at a zoo. It's incredible.
They're so habituated. Yeah, yeah. They are not afraid of you at all. They know you're probably going to give them something to eat. Although they
Mm.
didn't really like you to pet the animals. They told you which ones to feed and gave you the food. So that was fun. The giraffe sticking its head inside our vehicle, just like in Jurassic Park. And if the dinosaur sticks his head in there, you'd be like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
But they're gentle and sweet and nice. Everybody should go.
And the Szechuan takin is a very strange beast, but they had a whole herds of them. It's a type of Tibetan goat, but
Mm.
the way the tour guide described it is like a cross between a guinea pig and a bear. They have
Yeah,
Wow.
like the face of a guinea pig, but the build of a bear, but they're a goat, and they're just like they're crazy looking. They look
yeah.
like a fantasy
You
creature.
got to Google
And
it.
it's really we would love the Szechuan takin.
And where they're from, they're gentle and nice, and so they eat them. They've got a lot of meat on them, and people are hungry. So that's why they're extinct in their native land, and they have them in this place and probably other places. But that was my favorite animal that we saw there, I'd say.
And yeah, the belching deer that you mentioned were was like a nearly extinct Asian deer called the Pear David deer. And
Yeah.
the male deers would get themselves covered in mud and like get all like nasty stuff,
Seaweed. Yeah.
yeah, nasty stuff draped in their antlers, and they would just belch all throughout the day to attract mates. And it's just like literally like,
Good one,
really
Zach.
really long burps that were
Yeah.
going on all night, and it was cracking me and mom up.
Oh,
The
Um,
yeah.
Barney of the animal kingdom.
Yeah,
Oh,
Barney Gumble from The Simpsons. Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, we had a great time, and the yurt was lovely, and also with our yurt stay, we had great and meals. They gave you really top of the line,
Gourmet dinner.
yeah,
Nice.
and it was included with it, and it was a great experience. We had a great time.
Yeah. I recommend everybody go there. It's been there for 30 years, a 30-year secret.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it seems like they're doing good work too. Like they're breeding these endangered animals, and they're trying to it's a conservation effort, and they
Yes.
just have like kind of a tourist kind of angle to help fund it. But
Right.
it's a cool place. I know mom wants to go back, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do.
I'd love to check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely more exciting than a zoo experience. But yeah. Oh yeah, mom, you listened to our episode about Watership Down on Patreon, and I know you were telling me about that. Do you have any thoughts on Watership Down you want to share with the pod?
Well, I just have had many rabbits in my life because as the animal lover, when you're little, about the only thing you can get is small stuff like hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs, rabbits. Every year they would be selling them at the pet shop where I'd go all the time. As soon as I learned how to ride my bike that far, I'd always go to the pet shop and be like, what can I afford? Where can I put it? And if I could, I had everything from turtles to every kind of rodent, but the rabbits especially. I really loved little rabbits and I loved letting them loose in the yard and then catching them, put them back in the house and Watership Down. When I read that, it just kind of blew my mind because I really never thought about rabbits in a warren, and then I never thought of rabbits with human-like tendencies. But the funny thing about rabbits, I think that you're talking about the words that they use in Watership Down, like silflay,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and that was their reference to like let's go eat grass, let's go find some fresh stuff to eat. And like cows, they chew their food after it's kind of in them already. Cows burp it up, but rabbits instead, they have some of their pellets that come out are just turds, and then some of them are these edible ones. And I remember the first time I had a bunny, I'm watching it in his cage wash itself all the time. Then he reaches down and grabs some fresh turds and he starts chewing them. And I'm like, what? I thought it was something was wrong with them. And I found out from the pet shop, no, that's normal. They do that all the time. And in Ship Down, they talk about it. He even says, let's go chew pellets. And that's what they're talking about. Let's go up there. We're going to just rest,
Ah.
relax, Netflix, and chew a pellet, you know. But it still tastes good to them. For some reason, almost any animal will eat its own shit or somebody else because they smell something in it. That's why they do it.
We're sorry to anybody who's eating while listening to this.
Well, when you study animals, you know, I had a whole class in fecal, you know, everything about stools of different animals, how you collect them, what they mean and stuff. So that's why I know that.
Yeah, so that was our little bit on rabbits, but let's go back to horses. Let's talk
Hmm.
about Seabiscuit. And you also mentioned that you want to talk about this documentary, Harry and the Snowman, which is a favorite of yours.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that too. But let's
Hmm.
start with Seabiscuit. I just rewatched it this morning, so it's fresh in my head.
Hmm.
As did I.
Nice.
Do you remember when we saw it at the movies? I think we saw it together.
Oh, you went to the theater for it? I feel
Yep.
like I have a vague memory of that. I definitely remember seeing it before.
Hmm.
You remember it, obviously.
Yeah, I think Toby Maguire did a great job as you know, a jockey, and I liked everybody who was acting in it. I thought they all did great jobs. I mean, and not all horse movies are that good. They did another one about Secretariat, which was a
Mm,
horse from my time that I saw win the Derby by 31 lengths. I mean, no horse has ever done it since. And the
mm.
movie about it was just, meh, not good. It had
Oh,
Yeah.
Diane Lane, and I'm just like, no.
yeah.
This is silly. It's just like, but when it's the person's real thoughts and they have so much footage of the real Seabiscuit and all the real actors, uh, it, it kind of gets me. I love a true story. As soon as
Mm.
I hear it, because anybody can make up anything and tug your heart, but when it's a real story that the animal tugs your heart, that's where I'm at. I'm just like, oh my God, where's the Kleenex?
Yeah, and this movie is based on a book about Seabiscuit. I feel like you read that book. I feel like you
I
have
have
that
that
book.
book, yes, and I did read it. Great author.
Do you remember if there's like any big differences from the movie to the book at all?
It's a true story, though, right?
Yes, it is. And it was
Yeah, yeah.
a very thorough work by this Laura Hillenbrand. She wrote about horses, but particularly she was obsessed with Seabiscuit. And she should have been because there just was so much information about him. And he won so many races and he was not a I mean he was a thoroughbred. He got his name Seabiscuit. When you think of that, you think of something soft. And he
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
kind of a nice horse to begin with, right? He slept a lot, he ate too much.
Hmm.
He Most horses eat a lot, but they don't sleep like that. Laying flat
Yeah.
out is unusual. And
Yeah.
so that was
He's a lazy
unusual.
horse.
That's what everybody thought until he proved him wrong, you know.
Yeah.
He couldn't be beat. But it was all to me, my opinion is because he loved the people. The bonding with the people is important in both of these stories. And if he didn't have a crappy upbringing, and then these people changed it when they took hold of him and started training him and giving him love, and you probably noticed in the beginning how they had to put all these different animals in with him to try to calm his ass down because he was just angry. He was angry. He didn't want to
Yeah,
run.
he chucks the goat out of
He tried to
the
he tried to bite people. Yeah, and if he threw an animal that he didn't like, he would probably buck it out of there, you know, or chase it out.
I love how
But
that goat goes flying.
Yeah. But like his old owners were like kind of like mistreating him or something because they made it
yes,
sound like he started off as a very calm, nice,
yeah,
lazy horse, but then they kind of mistreat him and then he got real surly.
when you go to the mistreating part, the first thing I heard in the movie, and what I remember about the book is just what they do to get him to go faster is, of course, hit him. And when the jockey is hitting him with this, he said, hit him as many times as you can to get him to go faster. So this guy's just continually cropping him, hitting him, and horses don't like that, So if they give you what they want, you're supposed to stop. The punishment has to stop, and it never did with Seabiscuit, and it just turned him hard. Now his father's name, I also want to say that, was Hardtack, which was another name they'd give for food on a trail ride, and it's usually a hard biscuit, and that was a
Mm.
very famous horse, his father, who won a lot of races, but Seabiscuit being soft was named Seabiscuit, kind of a mamby-pamby sort of a cute name.
Mm.
Hmm.
And then to call him the biscuit for short, even cuter.
Yeah.
But but
Yeah, it is funny for him to like face off against War Admiral, like the most scary name you could imagine
yeah,
against Seabiscuit.
and if you notice the size of the difference between them when it's just those two in the match race, he's 18 hands tall, which is like 4 hands bigger than that one. So you put your hand one next to the other, and that's how you measure the height of a horse. This horse towered over him. Everything about him was huge and strong. And here's this little wiry biscuit who had legs that weren't quite right. A lot of things about him that made him undesirable, but he had a great heart. And he just
Hmm.
he didn't like to lose. And so that's what made him great. Plus the people that he loved. Red
Yeah,
Pollard especially. He loved him so much. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They do a great job in the movie of showing the relationship between Red and Seabiscuit. Red, played by Toby Maguire,
Hmm.
I think who does a great job in this movie.
He's got a little bit more of like a fiery personality than you're used to with him.
Yeah,
He's
he's
Yeah.
like he's cussing a lot.
Yeah. There's that one
Yeah.
scene where he's doing the hot walk and he's like, piece of shit, old glue pot.
Yeah. He's angry, yeah, because, for one thing, to be a jockey, you have to starve yourself. So he's
Right.
always hangry, right? I mean,
When
he
there's the
can't,
scene where he doesn't want to eat.
And he also like makes himself puke too.
yeah,
Yeah.
they might eat, but they're going to always throw up. And especially before a race, you got to make sure you're the right weight or you can't do it. So there's a lot of pressure on everybody. Everybody was wounded, like they said at the beginning of this movie.
Right.
The jockey, the horse, the trainer, you could see he was thrown out into the bushes. Remember where they were beating up that white horse and they wanted to kill it? And he says, I'll take it. Why? Because I can make it better. And he says, that's when he puts the famous line out. Why throw something away before it's time? Just because it's
Yeah.
a little bit banged up.
And America was banged up at this time
And
because it was the Great Depression.
that is why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody glommed onto this horse because he was the underdog. He wasn't supposed to win, but he did. And here was America going through the same thing. And plus the
Hmm.
Hmm.
fact that every time that they would race him, they would open up the infield to let people come in for free. So it wasn't just a
Mm.
rich man that can watch these races, but Howard, the owner, said, let's let everybody see him. Everybody wants to see him.
Yeah.
I wish I was alive then to see him.
Yeah, in the movie they say 40 million Americans like were like listening in on
Hmm.
the radio to like the Seabiscuit War Animal
Yeah.
race.
No social media,
All you had was the radio.
That's all you got.
Just listening to horses. Did you ever like ride horses or race horses, or did you know people who did or have a racehorse or anything like that?
I started riding as early as I could convince my dad to take me horseback riding. We had to go to a riding stable, like in West Bloomfield, where you paid them $10 or $12. They put you on a horse for an hour, and they try to give you one they figure's going to be good for you for not going to cause too much trouble. They don't really run very much, but they walk around and they want to get back to the barn. So you get an hour's ride that when you never been on a horse is pretty cool. And the first time my dad took me, he had his cigarettes in one pocket, his camera on his shoulder so that he could take a picture of me on the horse and stuff. And I remember when the horse galloped or moved a little faster, all the stuff fell down. All the cigarettes were on the ground thing. And he'd never been on a horse in his life before, but he just went for me. And
Uh,
I think I was probably 10.
but you just kind of just to ride them around, but never to race them, I
Oh
assume.
no. No. And I didn't know anybody that did any racing. The closest we ever got was just to go to like I said, the Jacks, the DRC or whatever, so you could watch them run around. And it was pacers, where they pull the wagon,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just horses that I was looking at, and so I
Yeah.
didn't care what they were doing. I was just like, ugh,
Didn't do any jumping like Snowman.
no. In fact, the only jumpy horse that I've been on is the one we got right now, Roy. When he started to feel better when we first got him, he wasn't too familiar with things. But then when he got used to it, we were out riding him and there was a log to cross. And I thought he was just going to step over it, just like a normal horse does. And then he just did this nice little boom, boom, leap. And I was just like, wow, that was thrilling.
Nice.
I don't really want to do that with a horse, but it's when you have to get over an obstacle, then it's okay.
And Roy's a white horse like Snowman, so
Yeah.
they got that in common, the urge to leap.
Well, we should differentiate because we've mentioned Snowman a few times. Who is
Yeah.
Snowman and who is Seabiscuit?
So Seabiscuit was a thoroughbred racehorse that just didn't do well until he met these certain people, and then he did great things. Now, Snowman was a horse that was a Amish plow horse for his whole life. He was not thoroughbred. He was just a mix horse. And he was probably neutered too, because when you have a horse that you want for a workhorse, you don't want it to have anything else on its mind but working. So they neuter him so that they're going to be good for that. So he was a great horse for, I think he's got him when he was 12. Delayer, that's
Mm-hmm.
the guy who bought him. And he was just at a horse auction and he missed most of the auction because he had a flat tire or something. And when he got there, he only saw the horses that were going on the truck to go to the meat factory. They're going to go knock them down and kill them and sell
Mm-hmm.
them for meat. And so he's watching the horses go up and he sees the white horse and he says, and just when I looked at him, he looked down at me. So their eyes met. And that
Mm-hmm.
was something that they also said in Seabiscuit. They said when the trainer's watching him walk by and Seabiscuit just looked right at him like, "Who are you?
Yeah.
What are you going to be to me?" And they connected, and that's what brought them together. And the great thing about that, he bought him for $80, Snowman, off of that truck because instead of getting him killed, he says this could be used to train children to ride. A very gentle old horse, right? Nothing special.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets him back to his place, and they have a great film of his family giving him a bath because after they've been through, auction, they're going to be a hot mess. So they're just scrubbing him with brushes. He's got foam and soap all over him, soap suds,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're rinsing him with the hose, and he's loving it. He's probably never had that done to him on a farm ever. And he's just digging the attention he gets from all these children because he had like 8 kids, and he just said, "This is where I want to be," and he loved it so much. For 1 year, they had him there. And then he had made a deal with somebody to sell him a certain horse. He forgot about it. So he said, "Look, I'll sell you a Snowman instead." They weren't that attached. They liked him, but they only had him for a year.
Mm-hmm.
But Snowman kept running away from this guy's farm 6 miles away by jumping the fence. And it was a big, high fence. And this was a heavy horse with great big plow feet. That's like a clumsy horse, you would think. But he kept jumping the fence. And then, and like he says, he opened the door and there's my friend Snowman. 3 times the horse did this. He
Yeah.
took him back to the farm and said, "Make the fence higher so he can't jump it." They did that. He did it again. Then he says, "This time we're going to tie a big tire to his halter." And he says, "This will keep him from jumping." But 4 days later, there was Snowman with the tire still attached to him in his front yard. And he said, "That's it. I'm not going to sell him anymore." And once Snowman made it clear to him that he wanted to stay there and he kept him, he just flowered. Like he said, if he can jump these things, what else can he jump? And he started
Mm-hmm.
taking him around his ring and giving him different things to jump. And he just did everyone effortlessly. Not all horses want to jump. Even
Yeah.
jumpers sometimes, if you're watching a show, will stop just as they get to it, like, I don't want to do that. But he loved to jump and he was great at it. So that was how they got together.
Yeah, I love that story and Harry and Snowman. Yeah, about him keeping jumping back to Harry as a very, very sweet little thing.
Yeah, that jerked my first tear when I said he kept coming back. Oh my God, he loved him.
It's meant to be.
Yes, it's meant to
Yeah.
be.
And so this documentary, Harry and the Snowman, I watched it on Amazon Prime. It's a
Hmm.
great little documentary because it mixes, this real footage of the trainer Harry
Yep,
riding Snowman, and then it also has current day footage of him now and how he trains horses
right.
still. And I just love all these interviews with he's like this cute old man, and
Yep.
then it's like all these ladies who like fell in love with him all through his riding days.
Right.
I think there's one point where they call him like he like won like most lovable man or something like that, and he really
Yeah.
is like a really charming guy.
And he was very good looking too, with really
Yeah.
shockingly blue eyes. And he was training all of these young rich girls how to ride
Mhm.
horses, and they were winning because they were listening to him and learning. But I watched this documentary just this morning about what his life was like in the Netherlands before he came here. And that's
Right.
the most interesting part to me. I mean, not the most, but
Mhm.
fascinating because his father joined the army because they invaded Holland, Hitler. That was one of the first places before the Second World War that they invaded.
Mhm.
And his father joined the army, and he used to go out at night, even though he was just a teenager. He was already great at riding. He won all kind of classes and different riding things as a kid. So he would go out at night looking for men that were shot down by the Germans, and he would find them and they would hide them in their barn. They had a floor. It was very reminiscent of Glorious Bastards, where they slide the floor and let the people go down the bottom of the barn and then
Hmm.
cover it all up with horse shit. And the Nazis weren't going to dig through no horse shit to look for anybody. So he saved hundreds of people, his family. And he said that
Wow.
one time he brought a guy back that was almost dead. And when he did die, he buried him. But before he died, he took his dog tags and mailed them back to his parents. And the parents were so grateful for the information and the dog tags that he sent them that they brought him and his wife, at that time he was married, to America and to their house. They said, you know, you did so much for us. You come and be with us. And they gave him a place to stay, and they started him out in America. And from there, he started taking care of their animals, and then got into the horse training thing, and then thereafter more kids, and then he met Snowman. But I thought that was great. If those people, that was a twist of fate, and if those people hadn't brought him to America, he'd have never found Snowman. It's just
Amazing.
it wouldn't have
Yeah.
happened. It's because he was a good person and had a kind heart. And he also, you know, after the Nazis lost the war, they took all the horses that they took from people and just let them go. Did you see the picture of that where they showed the horses just all standing there? They were starving. And
Yeah.
he went in there. He himself went and took care of those horses, took them someplace else. He didn't say really where, but he saved them from just dying on the spot. So he was always, that was like his main thing was animals, people, connection, and he brought that to America. And then we all got to see it. I mean, became a
Yeah.
world champion just on an $80 horse.
It's an amazing story. And he
Yeah.
was called the Cinderella horse,
Yes,
and Seabiscuit is kind of a Cinderella story as well, you know.
right,
Yeah, one scene from Harry and Snowman that I really liked is this one they show how they would take Snowman and
right,
swim around
right.
with him, and the kids would be like three kids would be on his back, and just he'd be like swimming
It's like
around.
five kids. Yeah,
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 like five
oh,
kids, and the horses swimming with him, and he
yeah.
loved to swim. He just like would swim as long as he wanted.
Exactly. And he said, like he said, Harry says he thought it was his job. Anything that he's t asked him to do, he would do it. And so he would just whistle loudly. Snowman would hear it, he'd turn around and come back because the kids that were riding on him were thinking, how are we ever going to get back? The daughter said, she goes, we didn't know how we were going to get back the first time. But
yeah,
then he whistled, turned around, came back. What's the chances? Then the horse stands there and lets you dive off of him. What horse is
yeah,
going to do that? No horse I ever had.
Yeah, it's amazing they have footage of all that stuff. There's a lot of great footage in the documentary.
It's fantastic.
yeah.
That's all
And
I can say. Yeah.
one thing that surprised me, I guess, in this movie, and because I don't know much about horses, but I didn't realize that they were so attached to their owners. Like it feels like almost like a dog, because in Snowman, you know, there's that really kind of sad scene at the end where they say that, you know, when they knew that they were going to put him down, like that Harry was the only one that was able to like get him out of the barn.
Yeah.
And in Seabiscuit too, you know, like anytime like towards the end when Toby Maguire like shows up, like
Hmm.
it's like starts like bucking and freaking
Yeah.
out like that he's there. So
Yeah.
is that true? Like that horses like gain like sort of an attachment to their riders or their owners?
Yes, and I would say with just like with people, every person has a different personality. What one person is showing a big lot of love is not lot to another one. So, but to see it so extroverted with hollering, the horses yelling at you and stamping around and stuff like that. Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, not my horses are not like that because they don't really, I don't know if they're just too old or they don't love us that much or we don't have that fantastic a bond of them or what, but I know that when they've gotten loose before and we've had to catch them, we've always been able to. So that's our bond. They let us catch them if they happen to get away and run away.
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot rarer to find a bond like that with horses, and that's kind of maybe what makes Seabiscuit and Snowman stand out is that they did form such a deep connection. But
Yeah, yeah.
it obviously can happen, but I don't think it's as common as with like dogs,
Mm.
who are just naturally very loyal.
Right, right.
We might have talked about it a bit in Bella's Air, but I mean, since this is the horse episode, can you
hmm
talk a little bit about your current horses or past horses, the ones that you have at the farm now?
Well, these are now they're old, but we've had them for probably 15 years. They're closer to
Wow.
20 years old or a little bit more than that. Both of them are. They're definitely bonded to us. They don't, they like we have the one that's a kind of a buckaroo, I call him, that's Ned.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
sometimes will he'll just feel like bucking and he might buck you off. Now he's done
Mm.
that to Mark more than once. Yet, then their bond is such that Mark loves him and still rides him and the horse loves him and lets him. Because everybody says when you're taking a horse lesson, you see the size of this horse. If they don't want you on him and they don't want to take you somewhere, they're not going to. And
Yeah.
so anytime we've had horses that have been good for riding, which is I've tried to have everyone be good, we've done things with them that you really shouldn't do. Like one time, my brother shot a deer out here, and it was way in the woods, and we used my other horse, Tucson, to pull it out. He actually put it on her back. Now, horses don't particularly like the smell of something dead. They're vegetarians. They don't
Mm.
eat stuff like that. So they always said, don't eat a hamburger before you're going to go for a ride on the horse because you're going to know what you ate. Don't let them
Interesting.
smell your hand. So so that horse put up with that. He brought the deer back here, or she did, um, and that was kind of nice. But the one that we really had the closest bond with, and we didn't have him for very long, was Opie. I was thinking
Mm.
about this as in relation to the snowman story at the end. So when we had to put him down, he had like almost no teeth. He was a free horse that
Mm.
was a child's horse. I mean, they gave lessons on him, and he was so old that his teeth were so wound down in his mouth that he was probably more than 30 years old.
Mm.
And one of the things when I went to look at him was I remember looking in his eye, and he had a nice color on his body, a light brown, and these dark brown eyes. And I just looked at his eyes. I never rode him, but I said I wanted a companion for another horse, and I said, okay, those eyes. He looks like a baby, and
Mm.
we don't even know how old this old horse is. We brought him home, and he was always a sweetheart when he was here. Zach rode him many times as old, and he was skinny because of his teeth problem. It's hard for him to eat. And he would still, if you'd give him a little encouragement, like a little, he would break into this cute little lope, which was
Mhm.
just easy little bouncy little thing to get you going faster. And he'd be like, "How's that?" I mean, he just was so well trained, and he just liked us. He really liked us. So, on the day that he was going to be put down, I was very sad, and I told Mark, I says, "Well, see if he'll go for a walk with you." So Mark didn't put a halter on him or anything. He just let him out of his pen, started walking down to the lake, and Opie followed him all the way down to the lake and then all the way back home. And in between, he'd
Mm.
stop and pet him and stuff like that and give him love. Then he brought him home, and we were still waiting for the vet. And then it was in the pen with him, and I was crying and rubbing him and stuff.
Mm.
And I just said, just lay down, just take it easy for a minute, because I know he was hurting. And I laid down on the ground, and he lay down next to me. And I was like, it
Aw,
was really sweet.
that's very
Yeah,
sweet.
he was a very good ride. He was very smooth. The opie lope we would call it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Opelope.
Do you
yeah.
like Zach?
He was a very smooth ride. He's a good horse, but I would say the most classic horse in my mind of is Tucson.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's one I remember. That's the one
Yeah.
yeah,
I've ridden down at the
that
farm.
that's the most iconic horse to
The
me.
riding stable that we got her from, that they told me she's the boss of all these horses here, and she was a mare, and she was just real tough. She would just, give kicks and bucks, and sometimes when you were riding her, she just put her head down and give a little buck, like, yeah, I could knock you off, but I'm not gonna, and you're just like, okay, cool down. But she ran away one time. The deer run through the fence, knocked down the electric fence. She ran away. She was gone for a week. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I thought she got stolen, and I couldn't find her. Then finally, I put up an ad at the grocery store, and a lady calls me. She goes, "I think I have your horse." And I go, I was so happy. I went to see her, but a couple days before, I was dreaming about Tucson. I dreamt when I found her that her mane was gone, and she had this most beautiful flaxen colored mane, and she was a red colored horse. She was gorgeous. So I go into this barn and I walk in there and I see this horse and I go, Tucson. And her head snaps up like, how did you find me here? She wanted to be with other horses, and we didn't have any horses at that time, any other ones but her. She hated that. So she was happy to run away. And when we put her in and when I saw her, her mane was gone. And the lady said she was so full of burrs, I had to shave her. I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, no, I don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then there was my dream. So we brought
So
her home
you predicted her lack of mane in the
yeah,
dream.
I know.
Wow. That's amazing.
And when we were bringing her home, had her in a horse trailer, and she was just kicking the sides of it in anger. Like, are you bringing me back to that farm with no horses? I could just hear her saying that. And so after that, we got another horse, Rosie, for her to be company with. And
Who's
then
kind of a blind horse.
she ended up being a blind horse, but she wasn't blind to start with. She was probably going blind. And then she
Mm,
eventually was completely blind. But she was one of your dad's favorites to ride because she completely trusted you to guide her in the right place. So she
mm,
didn't have any bad ideas of her own, like, I'm going over here, I'm running away. She was cool. She was a real good
mm.
girl. We put her down on the day Obama got elected.
Yeah, it's a mixed emotion day.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was. I'm like, at
wow.
least I could be happy about that.
Hi, Zach. What I forgot to say in the pod was after Rosie was put to sleep, Tucson was super lonely. She didn't like being alone. No horses do. And after a few months, I finally found a friend for her. And that friend was Opie. And immediately, Tucson laid down and went to sleep. And I thought she had a heart attack. But after a half hour or so, she got up. They sniffed again. I couldn't believe it. I mean, they fell in love big time. And that was a happy ending.
That's powerful. It seems like you had such an emotional connection to all of
Well,
these
yeah.
horses.
Any attachment to an animal, it could be a tiny animal that you're going to cry about, but it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's with horses, they're bigger, and so you feel more responsibility, I guess. And when Tucson was being put down, I remember being so sad she couldn't get up. It was the same kind of thing I think that got Snowman. It was like a kidney failure, the vet thought. And it was in the terrible cold winter we had to put her down. Terrible, lots of sad memories with that. I just wanted to bring her in the house like a dog. It
Mm,
was really cold tonight. I'm gonna bring her in the
mhm,
house. Can't do
mhm.
none of that stuff.
Right.
But
Yeah, they're too big.
yeah, they're too big.
And you're great at drawing horses too, so you got that going for you.
Because I couldn't have a horse, so I would always perfect drawing them whenever I had to doodle at school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their horses are not easy to draw, so I've always been impressed by your ability to draw a horse.
That's great.
Thank you.
But yeah, we should go back, talk a little bit more about the Seabiscuit movie.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about some of the other characters. We got Jeff Bridges in this movie, which I totally forgot he's in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like the owner of Seabiscuit and
Mm-hmm.
kind
Hmm.
of like the hype man and the spokesman for Seabiscuit. He's doing all the press for him.
Right.
Yeah, he's a businessman.
Yeah, he's like an automobile man, right?
Yeah, he's selling Buicks or something like that. The one thing that I really like about this movie is from the very jump of this film, it sort of feels like a Ken Burns documentary, whereas all these
Mm-hmm.
slow push-ins on black and white photos of
Right.
Depression era.
With narration.
And yeah, this narrator that sounds very much like Peter Coyote or something
Mm-hmm.
that this could totally be on PBS. It starts off talking about the Model T car,
Mm-hmm.
which you're like, what is this? This movie's about cars? I thought it was about horses.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because obviously the cars displaced the horses, so the horses needed something to do, so they were
Right.
getting raced.
Right. if they got a horse and it was fast and they knew it was fast, you'd start racing it against your friends and stuff, and then you'd get a reputation, and then people would want to breed their horse to your horse to get some of those
Mm,
genes, which I'm sure happened with Seabiscuit because he was not a neutered horse. No race horses are usually neutered because they're always thinking about breeding after
mhm.
that, so they've got all their hormones, running, whether it's a male or a female.
But yeah, it's kind of the first 20 minutes of this movie is a good history lesson about the rise of the automobile and the Great Depression.
Right.
And there are little moments interspersed in the movie too, where it's like kind of these like little documentary breaks.
And I think that some of that came from the author of the story of Seabiscuit,
Mm,
Hillenbrand, because she's really a thorough investigator and she unearthed all of these things and probably said, put this in the movie, put this in the movie, because I thought there
hmm
was nothing else I would suggest to that movie to make it better. When he's really riding that horse, the shot from it is just how it feels when you're riding a horse, and you think, how can they go that fast? And not to
mm,
mention just all the injuries that they both had to deal with. That
mm.
just strengthened their bond together. But it was a lot of it is just the twist of fate. Like when Pollard says to that guy says, "Will you breeze my horse for me? If they know that a famous guy like you did, I can get more money for him." And he goes, "Sure." And then they have a horrible accident. Why? Because a guy's starting the engine on a tractor, scares the horse. Horses are easy to scare. And he runs him into that fence and just totally breaks his
Yeah.
leg. I mean, like
Yeah,
15
Toby's
places.
getting dragged around by this horse
Ugh.
that's not even his horse. So what does it mean to breeze a horse? It just means to ride him?
Just to ride him around the track easy.
Mm.
Like, just breeze him around, see how he feels. It's up to the jockey. You can see another part of Seabiscuit where he injured his tendon and the jockey feels it in his stride underneath him that the horse is not the same and he stops and picks up his foot immediately. That was when Wolf was riding him.
Mm.
And so all these coincidences together that should have put the horse down, number one, got the jockey out of there, number two, but just stuck together because the owner said, "No, no, no, we're going to try to fix it." And the trainer says, "No, we're going to rest him and do this." Did you hear when he was walking Seabiscuit around and they're both limping? And he says to him, "There's Arabian horses that don't drink for 4 days." And Seabiscuit like goes, "Mm." And he goes, "I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about
Yeah.
some horses do that because you just love to eat and drink and everything else. My horses they just really don't want to ride that much. They want to just eat all the time because horses in the natural state, if they're wild, they never stop eating. They're always grazing something. That's just what they
Hmm.
do."
It is sad to see that the big climactic race of the movie, Red, is not even the rider. He's just in the hospital bed listening to it on the radio, and it's
Yeah.
his friend
Yes.
George that's riding Seabiscuit. But I gotta
Right.
say, the actor that plays George is great in this movie, and I just found out today that he's not even really an actor; he's a jockey.
Yeah.
This is the only movie he's ever acted in.
Yeah.
His
Oh
name
He
is
was,
wow.
Gary L. Stevens, but I think he's really good in this movie. He has some of the best lines in the movie.
yeah, you're right.
I was curious. So in the very beginning, when you see the first race, all the jockeys are like beating the crap out of each other. Is this like something that happens in horse races where the jockeys are like punching, whipping each other and stuff? I was like, I've never seen two guys fight while racing a horse.
Yeah. Now I think that before the real professional racing rules happened, there were lots of ways that you could do terrible shit. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
not these guys were hungry already. They were angry to begin with. And then
Yeah.
if you bumped into the other guy and he had a chance to bump you back, he would. But then they start punching each other and you're like, holy shit. You never see that kind of thing nowadays, but back then, that's kind of the way it was
Yeah. It's
until
got
they
to be
changed.
illegal now, probably. Like
Yes.
you get
Yes.
disqualified. But I just thought that was funny where they're just like, God damn you. And they're like punching
I
and
know.
Yeah,
smacking each
whipping
other with
each
their
other.
crops. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good scene for sure.
But then when they're fighting each other all together, imagine that they're not making a lot of money. They're really hungry. Then maybe they have a beer, then they start arguing, then they start punching each other. It's just like a barroom brawl, only
Yeah.
it's out in the where the horses are because that's where they were because couldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah. riding like 40 miles an hour on a horse, punching another guy. I was
Well,
like,
just try to stand up in the stirrups and imagine that you're going at riding a horse that's going as fast as it's going, and
hmm
you're standing in the stirrups because that's the way they do the ride. You're really not sitting in a saddle and hanging on. You're almost floating.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
your legs got to be real strong and they got to take all of that. But then you got to go back to where Red Pollard was in the Depression. His family had to give him away and said, "We
mm,
can't even afford to keep you, but this guy will take care of you." And he's all sad. But that's what they
yeah,
did with a lot of kids.
mm,
And it
Yeah.
makes your personality kind of like, "Phew,
yeah,
you want
And he
another
grew
chance."
and they show him boxing in the movie, and I guess
Yeah.
that's how he gets blind in one
Yep.
eye.
Yep.
Got clobbered too hard boxing.
And that was money because in Cinderella Man, which I told you to watch, it was the same kind of deal. There was always money involved in it and betting. And so people didn't mind getting the shit beat out of them because they were going to make a couple $100. Where else could you make that in Depression America? You couldn't.
Yeah. We haven't talked about the trainer of Seabiscuit, who's played by
making his return.
Hmm.
Chris Cooper.
Chris Cooper is our
Yeah.
third time covering a Chris Cooper movie.
On this year of the podcast. Yeah, 'cause he's in Lonesome Dove as July, and he's in American Beauty, and now he's back for Seabiscuit. Now he's
Yep.
got white hair.
Yep.
Yeah, he's pretty good in this movie, I thought.
Oh, he's
Yeah, I
great.
thought so too.
And there's a moment that reminded me of Bellazer when he's like fixing one of the horses, one of the white horses, by like tying hawthorn root around the
Right.
the
Right.
horse's leg. What do you
Yeah.
know about that? He says it increases circulation. Is that something that you're familiar with, Donna?
It is. I mean, I just was watching an episode on this. This woman from Ireland has a show, and I believe she's a witch, where she talks about all the different plants that she goes, "See this plant right here? You can use it for X, Y, and Z," and she'll tell you all the things. But hawthorn, she's always talking about how great it is, every part of it. And so, if he was using it to increase the circulation and take away swelling, that's very naturalistic method that you wouldn't see nowadays. It's all going to be, you know, powered injections and painkillers. That's what they do. Just give the horses that are running painkillers so that they can keep running. But this
Mm.
guy says, "No, I'm going to fix them," and so he puts that poultice on his leg with all that stuff, and then of course stopped with the beating. That usually helps. And then the horse feels cared for. They just know somebody cares about them.
Yeah, but that was reminding me of Bellazer. Just
Yes,
finding natural
that's
ways
right.
to heal.
Poor people's way is another word for it because
Yeah.
this woman says these things are just weeds that grow outside, but if you know what they're good for, you can go out and dig it out and make yourself some medicine. So that's what people did and should do. Why not?
Yeah. Another good Chris Cooper moment is when he kind of recognizes that Red and Seabiscuit should be linked up because on one side of him, Seabiscuit is like going crazy, and there's like four guys trying to wrangle Seabiscuit. Then he
Right.
looks and sees Red, and he's like fighting four different guys.
With a
Exactly.
bucket.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like these two need to be matched with each other. They got the same energy. I thought
Well,
that was a
I'm
great
glad that
scene.
they showed that part there because it shows you how he thinks about people and animals in general. And he was just a real down-to-earth guy that if they didn't have him, Seabiscuit, they would never figure out all the things that they had to with him. Like he said, he forgot how to be a horse. Remember the first ride that Red takes on him? He says, "Okay, we just got this horse and he's terrible at the track. He doesn't know how to run. He doesn't know anything. So just take him out and run him." He goes, "Well, when should I stop?" He goes, "When he stops." And they
hmm
run for who knows, a half a day maybe. The horse stops, starts again. He's just having fun like when he was a baby.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very pretty scene because it's like set in like autumn, so you got all the
Yeah.
fall leaves, and the
hmm
Randy Newman score is going.
Hmm.
Oh, it's Randy Newman. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, Randy Newman did the whole score for this movie, and we just talked about Randy Newman on Babe Pig in the City because he
I
did the
love Randy.
credit song.
He's a
So
three-timer this season too.
yeah, Toy Story, Babe Pig in the City, now Seabiscuit.
He's an
Mhm.
animal lover.
Him and Cooper are in a race right now. Who's gonna pull ahead? The Newman Cooper race. Yeah, I love Chris Cooper in this though. There's that one scene when him and Jeff Bridges first meet, and he's like, "Coffee? It's bad though."
Yeah.
But yeah, all of the characters. So you've got Jeff Bridges as the businessman, Chris Cooper as the trainer, and then Tobey Maguire as the jockey. They don't all meet until about an hour into the movie.
Right.
And that's when things really start picking up steam.
And it was another twist of fate thing because he was a car guy who had a terrible event in his family when his son drove the truck and his young son dies. He was
Mhm.
devastated by that. He's got this money. He's kind of getting away from cars now, especially after what happened with his son. So he's looking for something else, buys this farm, and they said, oh, it's got a big barn. And what did he do? He just puts all his cars in there and kind of shuts them up and forgets about it because he's grieving.
Right.
But then he meets this woman, falls in love, and then they start.
Elizabeth Banks.
And she was great in the movie too. One of her best roles, I think. And she was not being funny, but she was just being. She was the one that got him onto the horse. Remember, he said, "I haven't been on a horse. I don't know if he said ever or in years, but he rode with her." Then she got him into the horse thing, and then he said, "Know any good trainers?" And they're like, well, that guy right there is a trainer, the guy in the bushes, with the white horse. But, he doesn't work much anymore because he was a quiet guy and he was not real loud about anything or vociferous. So he was kind of kicked to the curb too. And so he picks
Mhm.
up another person kicked to the curb. Then Tobey Maguire, he's kicked to the curb. He gathers them all
Mhm.
together because that helps his grieving, helping these people. And that's just true.
Ah, good point. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, Bridges has a great line. Our horse is too small, our jockey's too big, our trainer's too old, and I'm too dumb to know the difference.
I love that line.
Really,
Yeah, it's
really
good.
lays out the whole dynamic that's going.
Exactly.
And there's one other character in this movie who is probably my favorite character in the movie, and that's William H. Macy.
TikTok McLaughlin.
Yeah, he plays this radio DJ with all sorts of literal bells and whistles, and
Sound effects, yeah.
he's just amazing. I
Yeah,
love his cadence. He just plays like a perfect old school radio man.
Yeah.
yeah. We'll have to put a clip of him in there because he just like talks so fast and he's just like
Mhm.
whip smart kind of commentary.
As long as we're talking long shots, I got a real doozy for you, folks. Today we got a horse that's going off at 70-1, and that's a short price, my friends. This horse couldn't win a church raffle, let alone a $2,000 allowance. Yeah, talk about a jump in class. This is the skunk at the garden party. Yes, he's the surprise in the punch bowl. As a matter of fact, I'll lay even money that this nag Seabiscuit couldn't even finish 6 furlongs. This is Tick-Tock McLaughlin live at Clocker's Corner.
I got a scoop for you. I got 3 scoops for you with hot fudge.
And then he plays his little xylophone, ding, 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 and blows whistles and
Yeah, so
takes
good.
his shoes and makes the sound. It's all the sound effects.
He's
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah, he steals the show. He's
I think
really good.
that's another thing they put together great in that movie with all the old clips is to show this is the way people used to really entertain each other. That he was a personality that people wanted to hear, and would tune in just to hear his antics.
Hmm.
I would tune in to him now.
I would too.
Yeah, we got to get the TikTok hour back on the air.
Get rid of this TikTok app. I want the real TikTok.
Yep.
The original TikTok.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
he's great. Yeah, it's just a good cast all around. The races are very exciting, very well
Mhm.
shot. Some good slow motion shots in there.
Yeah.
I just love in the big showdown with Seabiscuit and War Admiral when George looks over and he's like, "So long, Charlie," and then he
Yeah.
just takes off.
He goes,
Yeah.
have a nice ride, because he knows. He says, I'll never be at the end with you because my horse is not fast enough to be with Seabiscuit because he's ridden
Yeah.
him and he knows he's just got second gear.
Yeah, that's what he says to Red at the last race of the movie when Red finally gets to ride Seabiscuit again and Santa Anita.
Yeah, that's right.
So Seabiscuit's kind of his superpower is that like if he's falling behind, he has like a third gear that he can kick into. Is that it? Because
Yeah.
he was like a horse that sort of gave other horses confidence. So is
Right.
it like he's like giving the other horse like some kind of false confidence,
Maybe.
and then he just like
Yes.
springs into gear and flies ahead?
Yeah. because before he came to the special trainers and owners, he was never allowed to win. He was always held back. And so in him, that was really impossible to live with, anymore. And that's what
Hmm.
made him so angry and so crazy, is that they never let him beat the horse that he wasn't seeing him, in front of him. But
Mm-hmm.
but that was the one of the great parts in the match race, which I have a picture of right here on the bed that I'm looking at, and you can
Hmm.
see Seabiscuit's eye, and he's looking right at the guy who took the picture. You can see the way his eye is, and he's giving
Mm,
him the eye like, I see you, and here I go. I mean,
that's
how
awesome.
he beat that huge horse, it's really hard to say. He just freaked him out by being so fast. The War Admiral had never been beaten like that, and especially by a little horse. He was just like, what?
Hmm.
Boom,
And they talk about how they had to retrain him to like be good at the break, or what do they, how do they phrase it? Like,
At the you mean at the start, like they weren't going to
yeah,
use the start. The guy was trying to put all the odds against Seabiscuit. He was scared of him. He thought this little horse might just do something. So we're not going to have a starting gate. We're going to use a bell, and that's all they're going to be the go from the bell. And he had to be trained to go from the bell, which they did. You saw how they
Hmm.
did it at night. There's another movie I think I saw where he said, I can't see at night. And he says, the horse can see. He can see better at
Hmm.
night than you can. So just let him go. Now, I could never do that, ride a horse in the dark where I couldn't see, but
Mm.
the jockey was already blind in one eye.
Yeah.
So maybe for him, you could hear him talking to the Seabiscuit as he's running around in the dark of that night one. And he's just like, you are incredible horse because look
Hmm.
what you're doing. You're
Hmm.
doing it all. I'm just staying on you. Most horses don't get so much time with people to develop that kind of bond and also just to show them what they can do. Because a lot of people get horses and just put them in the pasture or put them in a pen, kind of like we have here. They can't do that much. Now, when we first got the horse we have now, the one that looks like Snowman a little bit, Roy, the first day we had him, he immediately went under a hot wire fence and showed us,
Mm.
I can take that hot wire. Now, the other horse
oh,
we have, he respects the hot wire. He felt it once in his life and he'll never go back there again.
Hmm.
But but Roy will do it every time if he gets a chance. In fact, now at night when we let him out, we just see where he is. He walks around the house. He knows where he wants to eat the best grass, and he just walks around the house, eats some food here, goes in the barn.
Hmm.
Tucson, she used to go in the barn when we'd let her out to graze, because our pen doesn't have a lot of grazing. We'd let him out to eat our yard grass, and she would immediately open the barn, push up the lid on this heavy steamer trunk where the grain was kept, and just eat as much as she could before we caught her. And then a horse will eat themselves to death with something delicious. So you can't let them just eat it. You have to stop them. So she was always doing that. No other horse that we ever had learned how to do that. But like I said, she was the boss of the farm she was at. She was bossy to all the other horses. And one great story about Tucson is when my neighbor's horses, the fence got knocked down, their two horses were out. She called Mark and says, come and help me get the horses back in. So he rides Tucson over there. She sees that these horses out. She's looking around. She comes to meet one of them and they sniff each other like they do. And then they do this kind of sound like a, "Eh," like,
Hmm.
don't give me any shit. And they say it to each other. And then that horse leaned over and bit her on the neck. And when he did that, here's Mark sitting right behind it, seeing the whole thing. And as quick as a blink of an eye, the way he describes it, is Tucson just spun around and gave him a double kick right in his chest with both of her
Oof.
back legs. Just like,
knock the wind out of him.
exactly. She's like,
Oh,
try that
jeez.
again, pal. So she had been beating up horses for a long time where she lived with this place that had 30 or 40 horses. She put them all in line, what she thought was in line. And then she did it with Bankers, who was an old racehorse, one of those old, harness horses. And he
Mm.
was
Yeah,
fast, but he was big and he was bossy. And he thought, I'm just going to give you a little bite. She had a scar on her neck from that bite he gave her. And she's like, she wouldn't put up with it.
she would give some moves to Rosie too, because Rosie was blind and sometimes like pee on the hay when I would like throw them their hay. And
Hmm.
Rosie would pee on it, and Tucson would get pissed off and buck her right in the stomach when she did that, and like knock the wind out of Rosie. Rosie would be like, it's like, why are you
Like,
pissing on my fucking hay?
hey, I'm eating here. Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
electric fence gave us a lot of entertainment as kids. I remember we would like dare each other to like touch it It was just a little zap, but we'd be like, oh, oh, we'd like put like pieces of grass on it, and so we could like
Yeah.
feel the electricity going through it.
That's because we didn't have the internet. So when you
Yeah.
come and visit, you had to play with, but
The electric fence. Yeah.
the shock is intermittent. So it comes like shock, blank,
Mm,
blank, shock.
mm,
So it's not
mhm.
continual. So you could
Right.
touch it and not feel it. So some kids would get bold. And I remember
Yeah.
our real old neighbor, I said to her, I've never gotten shocked yet, but I'm afraid I want to know what it feels like. She was from Kentucky and she said to me, take a hold of it. It'll sit you down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I am not going to do that.
Yeah.
But if something about the electric shock does run and make you sit you down, it
hmm
just does something to your legs, and you're like, here I go.
hmm Do we want to give final thoughts on
Mm.
Seabiscuit?
I think it's a great movie for anybody to see. I think kids could get something from it. If you love horses, you can get something from it. If you just like the actors that are in it, you're going to be like, wow, this is a different kind of movie. Like remember how they took Seabiscuit around on the train so that people could see him. And they're
Mm,
given autographs by inking his hoof and getting him to press his hoof on
yeah.
things. And I thought, great idea.
They did that at the Wilds, though. They had paintings or little footprints by all the animals there that you could buy in the gift
Yeah,
shop.
that's right. Another reason to go there. But the thing about it too was that with Snowman, he went all over the world. He became a world champion, and people all over the world knew this horse because he was such an underdog. And so that's what made movie more memorable to me because he was just a workhorse. He was nothing special about him. Nobody ever thought he was going to do anything special. And he was probably jumping great his whole life, jumping everything he could think of when he was out in the pasture. But when he was working, and he had two different minds, real discipline. And plus, Amish people, as we know, are very kind to their animals. They're kind people. And so he had good care for 12 years, and he never had any abuse or reason to doubt people like Seabiscuit did.
hmm
So he just was like, hey, I love these people. You're going to put 8 kids on my back and tell me to go swimming, I'm going to do it. And you give me a
hmm
bath, I'm going to take it. I mean, he just was amazing horse.
Yeah, we should also mention that Seabiscuit was nominated for like 7 Academy Awards,
Mm.
including Best Picture, but
Yeah.
it didn't win any because that was the Return of the King year, and that kind of
Yeah.
swept the Oscars. But
That's right.
it did get some respect from the Oscars, a lot of nominations. So that's people love Seabiscuit. It was a very successful movie, made a lot of money at the box office.
And I think a lot of that had to do with Laura Hillenbrand. She was like the author of the book, like I said, and she was on set very much, even though she had illness in her life that kept her from doing a lot of things. I think she still has some sort of illness, but she was a consultant. So she could fill in all the blanks where they didn't know to put something good. She had a good idea probably what to put in there is what I'm just guessing because the book was so good.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess my final thought is that it's a good movie, and I'm glad I rewatched it for this podcast. My main note is that maybe it takes a little too long to get to Seabiscuit. It's like it takes about like 40 minutes before Seabiscuit even enters the movie, and I want them to show up a little sooner.
They should have showed a baby Seabiscuit.
A
Yeah,
baby biscuit.
Yeah.
yeah, there's maybe a little too many Jeff Bridges scenes at the beginning. I was like, how is this connecting? But then obviously do see how he connects. But
Yeah.
I was also watching it on Pluto TV and it had a bunch of ads, so that really drug out the movie extra long.
Yeah.
Man,
So that-
you gotta
so
go
that-
Hoopla. Gotta check out Hoopla. Just get a
Oh,
library card.
I do have a library card. Yeah, that's where you watch Seabiscuit.
Well, I watched the first 20 minutes on Pluto and I was like, oh man.
Yeah, the ads were brutal.
Yeah. I was like, let me check on Hoopla real quick. And it's actually going away in September. So I just made it.
Wow.
Beat it by a nose.
Right. Another act of providence. It was meant to be that we do this now before it's gone so other people can see it and enjoy it and just go, like I did. Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? Especially, I mean, in those days also, like with Snowman and all those kids that he had to take around for swimming. Who would let their kids do that? Now you don't put a kid in anything without a seatbelt. And here they were all with no life jackets, no saddles, just a bunch of all these kids were really horsemen because their dad made them horsemen.
Yeah.
And like he says at the end of the movie, Snowman made me and he made me rich for my life. I could buy everything here.
Mm.
But they're both really good stories. I don't mind watching either of them again when I'm bored.
My final thought is if you like Tobey Maguire too, you got to watch this movie because this is one of his great performances. I feel like he's an underrated actor in my book. I love him as Spider-Man. Spider-Man's like my favorite superhero movie. He's great in that. And he's great in
Hmm.
this. So if you like Toby at all and you haven't seen Seabiscuit, you got to see it 'cause it's a great performance by him as Red.
Yep.
He's great in Babylon too.
Oh yeah, he's great performance, one scene performance in Babylon. Yeah, I like Toby. He's underrated.
Underutilized too. He's not in a lot of movies
I
anymore.
know. It's like bring him back.
Hmm.
Yeah, they had a very good casting for that movie, and I find nothing that I could make it any better. I think
Hmm.
it's just fine the way it was.
Yeah, Banks
Hmm.
looks great in brown hair.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
It's a classic blonde that went brown for this movie.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo your final thoughts, Zach, in that I felt like, much like Seabiscuit, this
Hmm.
movie takes a little bit of patience to
Hmm.
get into, but then once you cross that line,
Hmm.
the gates fly open and you are just full speed ahead. The
Yeah.
last hour and a half or the second half of the movie, it is just a sprint. It really is just, race after race. They keep ratcheting up the tension and it all culminates in this very sweet little eye rolly moment where it's like, maybe he fixed us.
Hmm. Yeah.
But my only note is that I think it is a little long, and like you said, Zach, like I think some of that first 50 minutes could probably be pared down a little bit. But you got to get the full story, so it's all there for a reason. I think
Hmm.
I haven't read the book, and I'm sure they had a lot of source material to work off of. Obviously, it's a famous historical story. So, um, but the last thing I want to say,
Hmm.
Zach, tell me if you agree. If last year was the year of the whale, I think 2024, the year of the horse.
I second that emotion. Yeah.
Because we had Lonesome Dove, lots of horses there,
Uh-huh.
Twisters, horses, Blazing Saddles, got a lot of
Horses.
horses.
Hmm.
Seabiscuit now. I think it's year of the horse.
I agree with you.
Monty Python is notable, Holy Grail notable for its lack of horses.
Yes, which we discussed.
But horse sound effects of the clip clopping, like in the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
So that's my observation. It feels
Hmm.
like a theme of the year.
Yeah, horses are important. It's great that there's a lot of horse movies out there, but there's not a lot of good horse movies. And I'd say Seabiscuit and Harry and Snowman are definitely two good horse movies.
I was
Yep.
surprised to hear that you didn't like Secretariat, Donna. Is there something about that movie that puts a bad taste in your mouth? I feel like
Well,
you'd love it.
well, I remember seeing every race of the Triple Crown that Secretariat won, and how that
Yeah.
horse was just unbeatable.
So you were
And
there.
I was watching them, everyone on TV when it happened, and everyone is more exciting because when he wins one race, then there's another, the second Jewel Triple Crown. Oh, then it could be and he just got better and better all the time, and there just wasn't that much story to go with that. Sure, he
Mm,
was the fastest horse. What else? They didn't tell us anything about his childhood, his little when he was a baby or anything. Nothing like that. So I think that, and it didn't have as many moving parts as Seabiscuit did, and I
mm,
thought it was empty. I compared the two
Mhm.
that way. Like I saw
mhm,
Seabiscuit first, and then the
mm,
Secretariat movie, and I was like, ho hum,
mm.
that's
Oh, that
not as.
reminds me when you talk about him as a baby, when Red's talking to George about how to ride Seabiscuit, he's like, when you do ask him, don't use the whip and never on the left side. They hit
Hmm.
him on the left when he was a baby or something.
Yeah.
I was
It,
like,
Oh.
I
you
like
remember
that.
the beginning where the guy said, hit him as much as you can going around the track. So that's where the hitting came from that he
Mm,
hated. And
mm.
when you're a horse, there's not much you can do except
Right.
just flop over and not go, stop. I've been on horses that do that. They just don't want to go anywhere and they just stand there. And you're like, okay, you can kick them and you can hit them with a stick and they're not going to go. They're just done. They're
Yeah.
sour, they call it. And that was the first horse that we had here I bought from somebody locally, and he was sour. And one of the first time I put my kids on, I'm like, let's go for a little ride. And I'm just leading him down the trail. And he just started bucking for no reason with 2 or 3 kids on him. And I was like, okay, this horse is a not keeper, not
You're
a keeper.
done.
Yeah. Now that one could have been in the glue factory easily, but I traded that horse for Tucson. And someone else got him, and it was not a problem. But maybe he didn't like kids. Maybe kids teased him. That's the thing. You just never know with an animal what happened to it before you got it. And you're like, boy, he's weird. He does this and that. Well, what happened to him before? You never know.
But they're worthy of a second chance. That's what Seabiscuit's all about.
That's right. I agree. And I think any animal, like even from hamsters and mice, whatever, if you put your time with that animal, you're going to bond with it in some way. If it's a small animal, in a small way, but in a big animal like a horse, your whole life depends on them. That's a different kind of bond. So I recommend to everybody, spend some time with your animals, give them some extra love, see what they'll do for you to surprise you.
That's a great note to end on.
Yeah, this was fun, you guys. I love talking about these horse movies.
Yeah. If people want to check out Harry and the Snowman, I think, it's on Prime Video. It's a 2015 documentary. It's like 80 minutes long. So it's a nice little story. So yeah, I'd recommend checking that out along with Seabiscuit. And we also want to thank our listeners for listening to this episode. And you can check us out at Film with Family on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
And if you have a favorite animal movie, you can email us at filmwithfamilypodcast@gmail.com.
Or leave us a comment on YouTube. And we have the Film with Family Patreon going on. So we just finished our animal series where we talked about a bunch of animals and a bunch of movies. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And who knows what we'll cover next. You got to subscribe $1.99 a month to figure out what we'll do next.
Yeah, we covered 8 movies in the last four months.
Yeah, the creature double features.
Yeah. So jump in there. If you like this kind of talk, we talked a lot about animals, and it was a really fun time, and it was very revealing too. Maybe a few revelations that you wouldn't expect.
Yes, very revealing, very revealing.
Thanks for having me on, you guys. And I just want to say one last thing. My dad died when I was like 11. So when we went horseback riding when I was 10, that was really cool. And then the next birthday I had after that, we went to buy a fish at the fish store. And because he couldn't get me a horse, he bought me seahorses. And they were expensive and weird. And my mom was really mad. It was supposed to be a little fish. And then I get these seahorses. So he was always trying to get a horse in there somehow.
Oh, that's really nice. I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, Mom. Thanks
Love you too.
for coming back to the podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
And we love the movies.
And we love our family.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.